Okie doke. Well, welcome everyone. I think that we're probably in a good time to kick off tonight's BLoc social, finding the question. Some of you might be wondering, what question and how do I find it? And why do I need to ask the question? And to help us understand the treasure hunt of questions is the fantastic Kevin Dyer. So if we can please give him a virtual round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's lovely to see the people here because I've met most of you in one-to-ones this last week, and I've just learnt so much, and I've had a fabulous time with creative, generous people. So thank you. Again, I'm not saying how to do anything. I'm just opening up a conversation this evening about how things work for me, and then I'm going to ask you to share how things work for you. We're going to start off with some more of my great artwork. So Kieran, if you could put the first one up, please. Okay. This is a series of pieces of art about writer's block and how we get stuck. This is all these read from the top. So the top of the page is the beginning of the play, and the bottom of the page is the end of the play. So this is the one where we start off strong and we just peter out into a land of insecurity. And this is the second one. This is when we hit the wall. This is the block, the big block. It's in front of our everything. It nearly stops us breathing. And the third one is when we start writing and our ideas branch out and branch out, and we end up with 8 or 9 possibilities, none of which we know whether they're any good or not. And number 4 is, this is the one where we start off writing, but then the world gets in the way. The person coming to fix the central heating and everything, children, parents, partners, jobs, gorillas. These are the things that just get in the way. This is the world as a block. And the next one is we've got it all planned out, and we know how it starts, we know how it ends. But the middle is just completely lost to us. And the next one is we've written the whole play, and we say to ourselves, it's all rubbish. I'm rubbish. No one will like it. I should never have been born. That's the total insecurity, self-doubting block, which means we never ever show it to anybody. Okay, that's it. So if we can lose all those now. I just want you to write in the chat which one you get. It might not be one of those. There might be another reason which makes you fail, which makes you get stuck. It's about getting stuck, really. What do you get stuck on? It could be something just like plausible dialogue. You can order this. Everybody can write. Yeah, definitely gorillas, Alison. Yeah. So there are 2 blocks, aren't there? One is the technical skills of writing the play, and the other one is ourselves. And I think we have to find a way of separating those out. Is the problem I've got with my play, is it to do with structure or character or plot, or is the problem I've got with me? With me. If you get them mixed up, I think it's unsolvable. But if you can separate them, there's a chance that you can deal with them. Of course, there are many common solutions to being stuck. There's drink, there's drugs, there's despair, there's shouting at the people we love. We can go for a walk. There's the most common one, which is procrastination. You know, cleaning the fridge, cleaning the oven, sharpening those pencils. Oh my God, that cat litter tray really needs cleaning out, doesn't it? I just want you to write down what you do when you're stuck. What do you actually do? There are things like you go and read a book on playwriting, or you have a talk to a therapist. But what do you do? Yeah, go for a walk, says Kieran. Go for a walk. You know, when you're out walking and you see all those other people, they're just other stuck writers. That's all they are. All of them, thousands of stuck writers wandering the streets. I think it's useful realizing where other people get stuck and how other people solve their problems, because it makes us feel a bit less lonely. Now, there's one there. Do other things like reading or surfing the internet. I forgot to put that in as one of the problems for writers, isn't it? You know what I mean? I'd have written some great plays if it wasn't for Facebook and Tinder. Okay. I'm going to talk for another few minutes and then we're going to open this up. I sometimes, this is what I think. This is what helps me. Oh yeah, Ginny says it's easy to get stuck on research. I knew a writer who was writing a play, very famous writer, writing a story about the North Pole. And he didn't know anything about the North Pole. This was before the internet. And he said to his son, who had been up to the North Pole, what's it like? And his son said, well, it's dark for 6 months of the year and it's snowy. And there are no penguins, but there are polar bears. And the writer said, okay, that's enough. And then went away to write the book. He didn't need to know all the other stuff that we spend months and months on. I hope I've said something you disagree with so far. That's my aim this evening, because I'm here to start a conversation where someone say, Kevin, what you said about that is complete rubbish. This is my solution when I get stuck. I don't try and look for the answer. I try and look for the question. I ask myself the question. It might be, why am I stuck? But if it's something specific, it's like, it might be, why is this scene boring? Or what are the other options for this character? Or why are they getting married? Or here's one for Jubilee, for example. Which scenes are the best scenes for me to have in my play? Which scene has the piece got to start with? Who is the most important character, apart from my lead character? Who's the most important character to them? Or who do they love the most? Or who do they hate the most? I'm always trying to ask a question around what I know. this is what I want you to do. I want you to think of a piece that you are writing now. I've already asked some of you this over the last few days. And what's the big question of the piece you're writing? We're not going to do therapy now. I'm not going to ask about you, the writer. What's the big question for the writer? But what's the big question of the piece you're writing? And just put it in chat. With Alina's question, can you be happy and alone? It's a great question, isn't it? Because it's one of the, if you like, the big themes of the piece. I would then go, all right, my central character, are they happy? Are they alone? Why are they alone? What makes them happy? Go on then, Alison, answer the question for me. Is the relationship between father and daughter so difficult? Can you tell us? Sorry, Alison, you're on mute at the moment.
All right, is that better? Yes. Okay, so the relationship between father and daughter is so difficult.
You don't need to tell us backstory or anything like that. Just tell us why it's so difficult.
Because the father blames his daughter for his wife's death, I guess, blames her for the difficult life that they have with her choices.
Just say that for us again.
Father blames daughter for his wife's untimely death, and because of her life choices he doesn't agree with.
There's two things in there, aren't there? Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you choose one of them?
I think it's the mother's death.
So there's a problem in the relationship because again, just say it to us again, nice and loud.
Because of her mother's death.
Okay. So can anybody ask a question around that, just to help Alison? Father, does he blame the daughter, did you say?
Yes. I think that's the underlying thing. He's blaming his daughter for his wife not being there. That should put a strain on the difficult relationship.
Okay.
How does the daughter know?
Does the daughter know?
How does the daughter know the father blames her for his?
Sorry, Alison, you don't have to answer. We're just going to go for the question.
Right.
And actually, Mary, you've got two questions there. Can you separate them out? No, it's great. Just separate them out.
How does the daughter know that the father blames her? And I had a second one.
Well, you also said, does the daughter know?
Oh, okay. Good point. Does the daughter know that the father blames her?
Okay. Anybody else got a question to help the writer? Yeah.
Yes, I have. Is he blaming her because he feels it's actually his fault?
Ginny?
Mine's a bit similar. Is he telling himself the truth?
Like there are all those backstory questions, like how did she die, etc., but they're not the big questions. Any other questions that can help the writer with this part or maybe the next part of the play?
Is the father angry?
Anything else? Well, there might be Mary, there might be a more open question than that.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. Don't apologize. Your question is fantastic. I'm asking a question on the back of your question. Is there a question that's more open?
I guess is the father angry at his wife, her mother, for leaving? But then I'd think of a second question, which would be, is he also angry at his daughter?
And I would go back to, yeah, they're great, they're great. I'd also ask, what does he feel? Because it might not be anger, but it might be. So what I'm doing, I'm just being forensic in, we think we've got a situation which has a problem, and I'm just going to bombard it with questions.
How does the father's anger express itself?
And with that sort of question, we're now on to plot. That will tell us what the next scene of the play is. Oh yeah. And in the chat, is it a question of miscommunication?
How do they communicate with each other?
And again, there's more questions within that question. Do they communicate? How do they communicate? As you said, David. When do they communicate?
I think you could ask, what does he want from his daughter?
Yeah. Always those questions about want always come up, don't they? Thank you, Stanislavski. How did Shakespeare write plays without Stanislavski? I don't know how he did it. Okay. Just find another bit of a piece you're writing that you're stuck on, that you just might be a piece that you've only just started. And again, just ask another question and put it in chat. Well, Ginny's got a great question. How do I move from theme to narrative? Maybe in a minute I'm going to stop talking. Somebody might come and answer that question for Ginny. That's a technical playwright's question, isn't it? Today I had a one-to-one with someone this afternoon, and it was great. This guy was fantastic. I loved him to bits. And he said at the end of it, all right then, how do you write a play? Alex says, how can I reach a satisfactory conclusion? Depends what you mean by satisfactory, Alex. Is satisfactory the right word?
Maybe not, but at least getting somewhere with it.
How do we end our stories well? Which really means, why is my story, is the ending of my story worthwhile? I think that's a really great question to start with. And then I'd go, all right, well, which bit is the ending?
And satisfactory for me makes me think, well, satisfactory for who? For me? Do I want to see the villain get his justice, or does the villain get off scot-free and it's satisfactory for him?
Yes.
And is it satisfactory for the reader or the watcher?
Mm.
And Melissa says,
all of it.
Yeah, questions, but I think you have to find the questions, and then you can say, I can try different answers. I can ask people about things. I can then go and do the research or whatever to try and find the solutions. But I think for me, when I'm stuck, I have to find the question. Why haven't I written anything all day? Why have I not written anything all day? I spent all day and I'm in front of my laptop and I haven't written anything. That's the question I need to answer. I need to answer it. I need to answer it because that's the big question. Okay, I'm not going to talk anymore. I don't think I am. Anybody just got anything they want to say or ask? And it's going to go out to the group now. We might pick up on Ginny's question, or Kieran might nudge us in the right direction.
When you're
Yeah,
asking these
This session is
questions,
all about.
sorry. When you're asking these
Mm.
questions, are you actually sitting down and writing them, free writing, sort of with your asking this as they pop into your head? Or are you just doing it like this?
Are you asking me, Mary?
I guess I'm asking everybody in a way, because my brain doesn't hold on to a lot of the questions that I come up with, if you know what I mean. So I think I need to visually write it.
Yeah, I would write it on a bit of paper and I'd stick it on my laptop, and I would make sure I only have one question. Because like Winnie the Pooh, I'm a bear of very little brain. So I just have to find the one question and answer that. If I have two questions, I'll never do it.
For me, I know I've been maybe asking the question, going for a walk, and then coming back and just on the walk, thinking about the question, thinking about all the different avenues that might open up for me, and then just trying to kind of freewheel it after that and just let the question almost answer itself. And it might be the wrong answer, it might be the wrong question, but I'll kind of, by knowing yes or no, I'll kind of decide, I'll kind of know more about the direction I do want to take it in. It's like the old trick of saying, if you're not sure what decision you want to make, flip a coin, heads or tails. And by the time you flip it, you already know which one you really want, because you go, oh no, please don't be heads, kind of thing. So that's kind of one way I do it, is just try and hold it in my head, do something where I'm not thinking too much about it. So a walk, you know, do some chores, no music in my ears, no distraction, leave my phone away, and just sort of like meditate on it a little bit, and then come back and sort of hopefully be in a position where I've got enough fuel in the tank to run with that to a point where I'll decide, yes, we're on the right track, but I need to do something else here, or that went completely arse ways and you need to rethink the question. But you can all unmute yourself now. This is a BLoc social, so we want to hear what you have to say. So please feel free to just butt in, use the chat box, put your hand up, whatever.
I'm really interested in Melissa's question about how can I add humour in this, because I find that's really hard to do without it sounding just like me cracking loads of jokes. I think especially if you know, with Scouse humour, it kind of glares out as being Scouse humour. And I don't mean joking about being Scouse, I mean our type of humour. So to me, I find that difficult. So I find that a really interesting question, Melissa. Like, and I struggle, you know, and I struggle too. I don't know the answer, unfortunately.
Has anybody got an answer to that?
I think, personally for me, I think there's nothing so funny as real people. So a lot of the stuff I do is observational. So that's how I kind of get humour, because into the plays that I write, I generally like to do kind of roller coaster of emotions for the watcher. But the humour, I think, for me naturally comes because people don't sometimes know they're funny, and that real people are absolutely hilarious. You observe them, really are. So that's how I think it comes naturally into that, just the natural thing. People might say to us stuff in conversation, and I'll write it down, you know. I think people are frightened now because they'll know it's going to end up on stage somewhere at some point, you know. But just things like that, just observing people, for me, that is the humour that you can add in naturally.
People use this phrase, don't they? Observational humour.
Mm.
It means they're just looking at the world closely and sending it back. Yeah.
Maybe it's about thinking about what's the character like and what situations might they be funny in. So if I've got a real grump of a character, can I put them in a situation where they have to be outwardly like really sort of presentation-y or really, you know, pleasant to deal with? And they might have, you know, they might have to do that because there's something at risk if they don't, and they do it badly, and just watching them try to smile and be all cheery is funny enough because we know the character doesn't want to be there and is an absolute grump about it.
So because there's humour of situation, humour of action, and humour of dialogue, isn't there? There's all those three. And I suppose
See, I find when you're acting humour, it's a lot easier, but actually writing it is much more difficult because you've got to think of so many different things, and it's got to be natural and not like forced, and to actually write that and write it into dialect, I just find that really difficult.
I think that's because it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But where do you start? You know, where do you start?
If you were writing Friends, they had a rule that every line had to be funny. Every line, even in the serious scenes. Every line, and it's not that every line, but it's like every line is working to a funny thing. And if you start to give yourself that, saying, I can't do explanation, I can't do exposition, I've got to get the joke in. I've got to get the funny situation in. It's as important as plot, and you're doing plot at the same time. That's what's happening, isn't it?
Has anyone experienced this where they write something they don't think it's funny at all, and then when they see it put on, it's actually hilarious? It's happened to me a few times.
Blame the actors. Did you then claim that it was a comedy and it was your great work? Is that what you did, Alina?
No, I was just like, holy shit! I was seriously in shock. Everybody was laughing. I'm like, I thought this was really dark, but it was like darkly funny, so it worked. It was both.
And was it the situation that was funny? Sorry, Stefan, it's you.
Was it? I wonder, was it recognition? I remember I did some acting a while ago, and it was in a play, and they just fell about because they just recognised it. It was so about people's lives that just recognition. It wasn't written as punchlines. Was that your play, Alina?
I think it was actually. Yeah, it was very like real. It was like new parents, new baby, messy situation. So yes, it's, I think, recognizable for people who had babies, I suppose, which is lots. Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Thank you.
I suppose that happens with family stories as well, doesn't it? We see families and we think, oh, that's just like my dad. That's just like me. Yeah, that's great, Stefan, isn't it? Sorry, Jenny, you were saying.
Oh, I was just going to say that, like, I really want people to answer my question because I'm really stuck.
Can you define a little bit about what you mean? Can you explain it a little bit more?
Yeah, so I know what I want to write about. I actually wrote a submission to an opportunity about this yesterday, and I'm working on it it's a collaboration. So I wrote this whole thing out, and then I got to the end, and then I was like, well, what actually is it, like, what happens? And I realized that I'd had a great idea and concept, but no actual, well, I mean, we did work something out, but it's still a challenge. Like, if you've got an area you know you want to work around, do you sit down until you come up with a character that would be in a certain situation? Or do you go, well, these are the emotions that are caused by this theme, so I'm going to work around those emotions and get the situation from there? Like, do you know what I mean? I find it a real head fuck, frankly.
Can you give us more specifics, maybe?
Just ask the question again first. Ask the question, that would be helpful.
Yeah. The question is, how do I move from theme to narrative?
Well, that's stuffed them all, isn't it?
It's something about some of the characters almost being like spokespeople for elements of that conversation. So maybe it's the Me Too movement. Do you have maybe not necessarily an actress, but a young ingenue and a man in power, and then maybe you try and just decide what that relationship looks like?
Yeah.
Or is
I
that
think,
just too copy and paste maybe?
well, I think the thing is, because themes are so broad, aren't they? They're part of human life, and everybody writes. Say the theme was loss. Like there's millions of plays about loss, so it's kind of like, how do you step away from that and really burrow down into the question that you particularly want to ask about loss, and how to do it so that people aren't going to go, oh, not another play about loss, boring, you know.
Ginny, shouldn't you be turning it around and asking the question, what do I want to convey about loss, and why am I even writing a play about loss?
Yeah, so I kind of did that, and then I thought, actually I don't want to write a play about loss, I want to write a play about joy. And it just messed everything up because I was like, that's not where I started in the first place.
Maybe you
But
need
that could be quite a beautiful connection.
Yeah, maybe.
So maybe the theme is just too broad. Perhaps you need to, what it is specifically about joy or loss or whatever the theme is. Like, why at this moment? What is that little kind of nugget that is presenting with the joy and stuff or loss?
Who's talking to you? Is there a character or a thing in your gut that's talking to you?
Stefan, did you have your hand up?
I was going to offer that I think it's chiming in with what is it, Marie?
Yes,
Marie's offering about seeing it through a character, I guess, getting into trouble. That seems to me how a lot of plays work, is the characters get into trouble, whether the outcome's comic or not, just for that sense of conflict that we need for it to make us care and make things happen, I suppose.
Yeah.
That one of the best plays I've ever seen, was about Lot, was Every Brilliant Thing.
Oh yeah, I love that play.
Yeah. Oh, but it was so warm and funny, but about the most dark subject. Oh my! And it certainly wasn't sold on that, was it? But it was, what you described was joyful about the darkest thing possible, really.
Yeah.
But
I'm
we
thinking a lot about.
we cared about him.
Sorry, Stefan. I was thinking a little bit about It's a Sin. If anyone's watched that on Channel 4, it's about the HIV/AIDS crisis in London in the 80s. And for me, I felt really joyful watching it. Calling it an AIDS drama doesn't really do it justice, because it's not. It's about a group of characters who find joy amidst a lot of loss. And when you said the word joy, I instantly went, oh, what's the relationship between this loss and this joy? Is it a journey from loss to joy? Because that could be really tender and beautiful.
Yeah.
Isn't that always the way, though, with loss? There's a balance between loss and grief, and it's always balanced with humor and connection and joy in a strange, I mean, in the strangest ways sometimes.
Yeah, well, you don't grieve or feel loss for things you don't care about, do you? You only feel grief and loss for the things that you love and care about. It's like the other side of the mirror kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So they do function in some kind of equilibrium.
I really like. Sorry,
Jenny. I was going to say, if you lose somebody, like a person, generally you'll have that sense of loss initially, but that very quickly will then go to that feelings of joy, of thinking about that person and all the amazing experiences you've had with them. And, whether it's in your childhood or, in your life in general. So that loss does tend to also tip into that sense of joy eventually.
Yeah, so I guess that's exploring our reactions, isn't it?
The kind of paradox of, and I think we've talked about this a little bit, about how do we find humor, or maybe put that character into the opposite of them. And you're kind of talking in opposites here. Is there an interesting way to shine contrast on characters or themes by putting them into situations that they wouldn't find themselves in normally or aren't comfortable in?
Yeah.
Rather than that just being sorry, Jenny, rather than that just being like a part of the story, but also kind of an emotional insight.
Yeah, I thought about that, Kieran, actually. That's good advice. I was thinking about putting people in a really unusual situation or an unusual setting. Yeah. I like what Melissa said too about giving the characters a secret. I think that's always a cracking way to start. That's brilliant. Thank you, Melissa. Writes down lots of secrets. Actually, that reminds me of Him. Has anyone seen Him? At the Almeida Theatre by Lolita Chakrabarti. It's online now and it's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And that is it. That's kind of like Lost and Secrets, and I really recommend it. It's really good, and it gave me the real feeling I was in the theatre for the first time in ages. So, sorry, Kevin, I'm just pitching somebody else's play.
I think this opposites thing is really useful. Like, it's one of the ways, isn't it, to make a character more than two-dimensional. If you give people who are very powerful, if you give them a weakness, or people who are lovers, if you give them a little sliver of hate. People who are weak, we were looking for, like, find the place where they're strong, you know, then you start to build the character, don't you?
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you say, I think, Jenny, about finding an opposite in a place as well. You know, if you've got somebody who's scared of heights, where are you going to put them? You're going to put them somewhere high, aren't you?
Thank you, everyone.
I think also, Jenny, in terms of your thing about theme and narrative, I think I always think that the themes there at the top, whatever they are, and the story is below that. It's the story that we use to carry the theme, and the story is carried by plot and character and all that stuff. So you've got to get down the food chain to find out what it is that's going to express those themes without ever talking about it. You've got to find the scenes which show the themes. Like in Alison's story, which is about what can somebody tell us? What are the themes behind Alison's story? We talked about the man and the father and the dead wife and the daughter. What are the themes in that play? Family.
Loss.
Love.
Possibly guilt.
Mm-hmm. So I'm, and that's just off the top of our head. So I've got to find the scenes where those things are going on.
Ooh.
They've got to be going on, not talked about. I've got to have a scene where loss happens, and a scene where guilt happens, a scene where family happens. That's my way of making abstract themes concrete. Alex's question. Alex had a great question, didn't she? How can I reach a satisfactory conclusion for my story? Should we talk about endings for a bit? We've got a little bit of time. How do we make fantastic endings or amazing endings to plays, to stories? Is there a rule?
Can we give them a twist at the end?
Yeah, how do we?
Surprise.
Has anyone watched Behind Her Eyes on Netflix?
Yeah.
Did you like the twist?
No, I didn't.
No, I hated it. I
I
hated
absolutely
it.
hated it. I thought it started off so well, and I was really into it, and then the end twist was just like, really? It just.
Does anyone
ruined
mind
it.
if I spoil the ending for people, just as a
What's it called again?
exercise?
Just tell me which one it is.
Behind Her Eyes.
Yeah. Oh, the one on Netflix.
Yeah, yeah.
You can tell me the end. I don't mind, but I
Okay.
still watch it anyway.
So it's a really interesting sort of like domestic thriller. Girl meets with a guy. Turns out he's married. He's also her boss, her new boss. She kind of has it off with him on the side, but is also befriending the wife. The wife is like stuck at home. She's forced to take medication by the husband. Very strange stuff going on. And it sort of transpires where, it all comes crashing down and everyone knows what's been going on and it's not who you thought it was. But throughout the series, there's been this kind of motif of lucid dreaming where the characters are conscious in their dreams and their sort of spirits leave their bodies and they go adventuring. And what transpires is the wife's friend from rehab, who's a gay Glaswegian guy, ended up killing the wife whilst their bodies were swapped. So now the wife is the gay best friend who's now been plotting this whole thing to make the husband fall in love with somebody else and then body swap with her. So as a queer person, I just felt like, well, this was just the opposite of gay baiting. Like, I just feel like you've made an unnecessary villain out of quite a sweet character. And it just felt cheap, because what I really wanted was for the wife and the mistress, I suppose you call her, to have to come to heads and fight about each other. But it just became this really strange sort of gay trap of a story where the guy was locked in a marriage with it was just really weird and confusing and just I felt a bit cheap.
Yeah, it was very unsatisfying as we're talking about that. I was just so deflated, really, because it started off so strong.
Yeah.
I might not watch it then.
It's good in terms of setup. Like, the setup is really interesting. You do kind of sit there and go, what's going to happen here? I can't wait. You're like getting the popcorn ready, you're waiting for handbags at dawn kind of thing. And it just doesn't come. It's like this sneaky little thing happens in the background. And I just thought, it felt like, just not to drop a word in, but like Deus Ex Machina, where it's just like, oh yeah, this will come in and not save the day, but this will resolve all the issues I have, which is so easy to do when you use something mystical or spiritual or magic-y in a world that doesn't really warrant it. It would have been perfectly fine for the lucid dreaming just to be a tonal thing that added something to it, but using it as a plot point just felt really cheap.
Do you think like the writer backed off on?
It felt like they couldn't resolve it without this sort of knot being unloosened from within.
Do you think they just hadn't done their homework? They hadn't done their storylining well enough?
Maybe.
I thought they were just on some hallucinogenic drugs, personally.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you say that was on Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
It's genuinely worth a watch. Like, and for me as well, like, there was only one gay character, there's only one character of color, and there's a really interesting class divide between the guy and his wife and this girl, and I just thought I wanted to be something to do with that. I wanted some kind of redemption for Louise, I think her name is, to just kind of be like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I wanted her to become the wife. I wasn't quite sure, but it just felt like no one got their satisfaction. And I think that what I'm trying to get to, Alex, is I didn't feel satisfied for anyone. Even though I didn't like them, I wanted them all to suffer because they're all horrible people. I wasn't satisfied with their suffering.
Redemption can be a really satisfying ending, can't it? Like, if you think about Shawshank, what's called Shawshank Redemption. That's the clues in the title. But it's really great, isn't it? And I think it's a good skill of a writer to pull that one off. Like I watched what's it called? I Care a Lot. That's another Netflix drama. And I kind of guessed the ending pretty early on, but I think as writers we do guess endings because we're looking for all the tricks, right, to learn from them. But also the characters were just so horrible. I didn't really care. I just didn't care. And I think that it's so true that you still have to give some sort of something to link into even for your baddies, you know.
Kind of reminded me of like Medea, because I felt like that was a very satisfactory ending for her.
Yeah.
Not for anybody else. And even though it's pretty gruesome what she does, I was like, yeah, good for you, Medea.
I think one word that underlies this word satisfactory is believable. It's like that's our baseline. It has to be believable. And I think what stories do, they take us from the believable to the unbelievable. That's the journey. So as we go through, we follow story and character and character. And a great story takes us to somewhere where we could never imagine we started off with. And it's still believable.
You just helped me a lot there. Thank you. I'm going to write it the opposite way round.
Yeah, I'm sure when they were doing King Kong, the first version, somebody must have had an idea. We're going to end on top of the Statue of Liberty or whatever it is. Is it Empire State Building? We're going to end up on the top of the Empire State Building with the aeroplanes flying around, shooting it. Oh, and also we're going to have the woman there. We're going to have her there as well. And the whole of the story just leads us up to that. Mm-hmm. That's what the technical skill of the screenwriters did. They got us to that big image at the end.
So start writing it realistically, but then take it to a place where you just wouldn't imagine it's going, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's grooming. That's what it is. It's grooming.
It's like those little secrets. It's like script writers just feed us little secrets along the way, and then the story builds and builds and releases those secrets to us as the audience, and eventually we get to the end and like, pow, you know. Yeah, it's like because I do acting as well, and I feel as an actress sometimes you have to be a writer as well, because you have to get the script that you're given, but then put your own character and interpretation into that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for today. I've really enjoyed it. It's the first time I've done your class.
Delighted to have you, Melissa. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you do them every week?
So this is called the Writer's Block as part of Writing on the Wall. So we do 3-week residencies with different writers, all on different themes. If you want, you can email me and I can send you links to all the stuff that we've done before, and you can check out some stuff coming up in the future. But yeah, delighted to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's just something in chat from David Bottomley. He says, are there 1 or 2 scenes missing from the latter part of the play? I think this is a great question to ask of your own plays. Have I got the right scenes in it? Are there any scenes missing? Do I need this scene? That's the major one. Do I need this scene? And probably, if it's the first scene of your play, I'd say the answer is no. And I haven't even seen your play.
You feel everyone start to sweat then, can't you?
Kieran, do we need the first scene of your play? Do we need?
I don't want to admit it, but you don't. I'd like to stand on the hill, but I'll probably end up dying on it if I fought you for it, Kevin.
You know, looking at our play and looking at the scenes and asking if we need them, I think it's a great question.
Tell you why. I think that's very true. It's also true of poetry, isn't it? You can often get rid of the first stanza, the first scene. But then as you get to the end of the play, I don't know if it's just me, but I sometimes think I haven't made it complicated enough, especially if we're looking at that old film structure of, you know, the hero's journey and how many of those things they have to go through from number 7 about, you know, fighting the antagonist and coming back with the Holy Grail and all that, and you know, the return and meeting and you think, oh God, I haven't got any of that. It's just, you know, are there literally 2 or 3 scenes missing? Is that why it doesn't quite feel as satisfactory as some of those well-made plays or some of those really you know, important plays. So just a question I thought, recently thought, yeah, you know, are there enough obstacles? Are they struggling enough?
They're good questions, aren't they?
Mm.
Good questions.
I wish I knew the answers, though.
Sometimes I think it's, is my play simple enough? I know you say, is it complicated enough? But sometimes is it simple enough?
Mm.
Because we sometimes have too many characters and too many things, too many settings, and we lose sight of the great driving thing, which in Alison's story is the dad blaming his daughter for everything. That's the thing that drives the whole of the play. I'm just guessing that.
It is, yeah. And I think when I've asked those sort of questions, what we've been talking about now, why it's his guilt and his denial of his behaviour that's transferring onto his daughter. So that makes the difficult and the fractious relationship. So that's been really good questions to ask to kind of tweak things.
So now I know, Alison, okay, he's a real problem. He's a real problem. So my question is, what is she going to do about it?
What is she going to do about it? Yeah, we need to I think I need to tweak that rather than obviously the whole play, the thread of the play is about that with other bits interspersed into it. So I think I want to make a bit more of that now. So I'm going to tweak that and ask that question and work on that question. What does she do about it?
Is she going to hurt him? Is she going to kill him?
No.
Is she going to love him? Is she going to replace him? You know, they're all options, aren't they? Once you've got the question for her, and then she becomes the driving person of the story, not him. Yeah. Just by asking the questions.
Yeah, Alison, I thought you said, do I need to tweet about that?
No, tweak.
We could just tweet all our plot problems and just get the answers from everybody.
Yeah, well, that might be a thing to do, yeah. See what we get back.
Plot problem
This
doc.
is really, sorry, David, go.
Plot problem doc.
I was just thinking, Alison, about this dad character and how he's kind of protecting himself in his hatred for his daughter. It's a shield against grief.
Yeah.
What can happen to him, or what can the daughter do to him to start to test that boundary back and push him back? And is that some of the back and forth within the play where she's sort of maybe willingly or unconsciously or unconsciously trying to test that boundary, and that's where his I don't know if you've planned for him to resolve that or to remain angry and not get his resolution, but there's something interesting about the lies that we tell ourselves, and as an audience watching that, you kind of want that boundary to be poked at and prodded, and that just gives you fuel for them to do something and for it to be dramatic, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's what she does. She is testing the boundaries to some degree. So I kind of need to explore that a bit more, and especially about how does she kind of manage that? What happens to that? What's the resolve of that? Is it, like Kevin said, is it love, acceptance, hate, or maybe she just kills and has done with it? I don't know.
I was just thinking about, I can't remember the name of the woman who wrote, but she came up with this sort of psychoanalytic theory of moves and counter moves. So she uses it in a sort of counseling therapeutics setting, where if we are, I don't know, for example, he'll do a hypothetical. We've gone to a counsellor because we're having, issues at our workplace and we need to put boundaries in place. Once we make that move, everyone else around us counter moves. It's a game of chess almost. And then we'll counter move to that. So if you have, your premise is dad hating daughter because the mum's passed away, you've got a lovely tension of emotions there anyway. What's the move? And then what's the counter move? And then how do all those things interact with each other?
yeah, that's really interesting, kind to look at that. Yeah, definitely.
Nice one.
Any last minute questions or things we want to explore? Because I've just seen the time. It is 7 minutes, 1 minute to 7, where we should wrap up. If anyone's got any burning questions or comments.
And we do this every week.
Sorry, Melissa, you're on mute.
Just thank you. Yeah, it's been good.
Fabulous, absolutely fabulous.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all so much for joining me. Please join me in giving Kevin a wonderful round of applause for a fantastic session.
Awesome.
I can see all the cogs in the back of people's brains.
Oh, yeah.
To click.
I'm just grateful they're actually whirring now.
Yeah, I know the feeling, Mary. I know the feeling. Thank you all so much for joining us. Don't worry if you have, I've just seen a message in the chat box. Don't worry if you haven't been contributing. It's absolutely
You were
fine
there,
for you to
Grace.
sit
We
back
know.
and listen. That's what it's all for. Thank you so much for joining us. You'll get an email from me in a moment with a link to a monitoring form. If you could please let us know anything that you would like more of or less of, that would be great. Look out for emails coming probably tomorrow about BLoc party slots. Alison, you are very quick off the mark, and I'll get back to you first thing in the morning about that. So Alison's got the first slot. Well done. Thank you all so much for joining us. Do check out the rest of the events for Kevin's residency and for some of the stuff coming up with Badisha, because like I said, even though it might not be your bag, journalism and the media, I'm sure there'll be really useful stuff in there. If you want to check out any of our previous videos, you can check out our YouTube channel or our Facebook page for anyone wants to sort of maybe just revisit some conversations and stuff like that. But apart from that, I will leave you to your evening. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks again to Kevin.
Thanks a million, Kevin.
Thank you so
Totally
much.
rocked it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Kieran
you.
and everybody else.
Thanks, Kieran. Thanks, Kevin.
Bye-bye.